Cop punch woman in the face and accuse her of theft. He is horrified to learn she is a CIA agent. The shopping plaza was crowded that late afternoon, filled with people moving from one store to another, each person busy with their own little world. Among the noise of footsteps and the sound of shop doors opening and closing, Elena walked into the jewelry store. She was calm, confident, and well dressed, her appearance neat but not flashy. She moved slowly, looking at the displays of rings, bracelets, and necklaces. To the other customers, she looked like just another woman admiring fine pieces of jewelry. But for the store clerk, her quiet behavior and the way she inspected the items without saying much appeared unusual. The clerk, already tired from dealing with several customers, whispered to another worker that something about Elena looked suspicious. His eyes followed her every move as if he had already decided she didn't belong there. When she touched a bracelet carefully and then placed it back exactly where it was, he frowned as if it proved his point. He didn't notice that Elena was paying attention to everything in the store, including exits, cameras, and the behavior of staff. Soon, a call was made to the local police station. Officer Daniels, who was already in a foul mood from his long shift, received the complaint about a possible thief at the jewelry store. Without much thought, he rushed there, feeling proud that he might catch someone red-handed. His style of policing had always been aggressive. He believed in showing strength first and listening later, which often caused trouble. But Daniels thought it was the right way to do the job. When he entered the store, his eyes quickly landed on Elena. She stood quietly by the counter, her hands folded in front of her, waiting for the clerk to finish with another customer. Daniels walked straight toward her with heavy steps. The other customers turned to watch. The atmosphere changed in seconds, whispers spread across the room. "Excuse me, miss," Daniels said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "We've had a report about suspicious activity. What are you hiding in your bag?" Elena looked up, surprised by the sudden accusation. Her calm eyes met his, and in a soft but steady voice, she said, "I haven't taken anything. You can check." But Daniels was not in the mood to listen. He believed hesitation was the same as guilt. Without giving her time to explain, he grabbed her arm roughly and pulled her closer. People gasped at the sight. Elena tried to stay composed, saying, "Please, you are making a mistake. I'm not who you think I am." Her words only made him angrier. "That's what they all say," he muttered. "I know a liar when I see one." The clerk, standing behind the counter, nodded eagerly, happy to see his suspicion confirmed by a police officer. Elena's bag was taken from her, and Daniel searched it in front of everyone. Inside, there were only ordinary things: a wallet, a phone, a notebook, and some small personal items. No jewelry, no stolen goods. But instead of stopping, Daniels raised his voice, accusing her of hiding something cleverer. "You think I don't know your tricks? People like you always find a way." The customers grew restless, whispering among themselves. Some felt uncomfortable, sensing the unfairness of the scene, but nobody dared to interfere. Elena stood her ground, not resisting, her expression strangely calm. This calmness irritated Daniels even more. In his mind, she was mocking his authority. Suddenly, in a burst of anger, Daniels struck her across the face. The sound of the impact echoed in the store. A sharp gasp ran through the crowd. A mother covered her child's eyes, while another customer shook his head in disbelief. The clerk froze, not expecting things to go this far. Elena stumbled back slightly, touching her lip where a trace of blood appeared. But instead of crying out or protesting, she straightened herself slowly, her eyes never leaving Daniels. Her voice was quiet, almost too soft, but it carried weight. "You will regret this mistake," she said. The crowd was silent. The officer felt a strange chill inside him, though he quickly brushed it off, pretending her words meant nothing. He held her arm tightly and announced to everyone, "This woman is under arrest for attempted theft." He dragged her toward the door, ignoring the shocked faces around him. Outside, the sound of traffic and street noise mixed with the heavy footsteps of Daniels pulling Elena toward the patrol car. She did not resist. She simply walked, her silence and steady gaze unsettling him more than he wanted to admit. Daniels convinced himself he was right, that he was teaching a criminal a lesson. But deep inside, something about her composure bothered him. Back in the store, the clerk muttered nervously to another worker, "Did you see the way she looked at him? It was like she wasn't afraid at all." The worker nodded, uneasy, feeling that this story was far from over. As the police car pulled away, Elena sat in the back seat, hands folded, looking out of the window at the city passing by. She appeared calm, but her mind was working quickly. She knew what had just happened would change everything for Officer Daniels. The first part of this story ends here, with the audience left wondering, who really is Elena, and why does she seem so unafraid in the face of humiliation and violence? What secret does she carry that could turn the tables on everyone who had judged her too quickly? Officer Daniels pulled into the police station, still holding on to the belief that he had just stopped a clever thief. He parked the car with confidence, stepped out quickly, and opened the back door to pull Elena out. She did not resist. She walked calmly beside him, her wrists in handcuffs, her posture straight, and her eyes quietly scanning the building as if she was memorizing every detail. Inside the station, the atmosphere was different. Officers were busy with paperwork, phone calls, and small conversations. As Daniels marched Elena past them, heads turned. A woman in neat clothes, with calm eyes and no trace of fear, was not what they expected from someone accused of theft. Yet Daniels announced her arrival with a loud voice. "Caught her red-handed in the jewelry store. She thought she could fool us." Some officers chuckled, trusting Daniels's version of the story without question. But one sergeant, an older man with years of experience, studied Elena more carefully. Something about her composure unsettled him. Most suspects protested, cried, or begged. This woman remained silent, her expression giving away nothing. Daniels pushed Elena into the interrogation room and ordered her to sit. The metal chair scraped against the floor as she pulled it closer to the table and sat down quietly. Daniels placed her bag on the table and dumped out the contents again, as if repeating the search would magically reveal something new. But the same items appeared: wallet, notebook, pen, phone, and some small personal belongings. "You've hidden the jewelry somewhere," Daniels said angrily. "I know you're kind. You think you're smarter than us. But I'll break you down." Elena raised her eyes slowly, meeting his glare. Her voice was calm but steady. "You're making a mistake, officer. I suggest you think carefully about your actions." Daniels laughed, slamming his fist on the table. "Don't try to scare me with clever words. You'll confess sooner or later." The sergeant who had been observing stepped closer to the room. He whispered to another officer, "Doesn't she seem a little too calm to be in this situation?" The other shrugged, not giving it much thought. Inside, Daniels continued his questions, growing more impatient. Elena, however, simply sat back, her hands folded, answering very little. Her silence felt like control, not fear. Finally, he allowed her to make her phone call. Elena dialed a number quickly, pressing the buttons with certainty. She spoke only a few words, quiet enough that Daniels could not hear, then ended the call. She placed the phone back on the table and looked at him. Not long after, the station phone rang. The desk officer answered, listened for a moment, and frowned. The call was from someone claiming to be from a government office, requesting Elena's immediate release. The officer hesitated, unsure, and transferred the call to the chief. Minutes later, another call came through, then another. Each one more urgent than the last. Daniels dismissed them all as nonsense. People try tricks like this all the time, he said proudly. They get friends to call, pretending to be important. Don't fall for it. But the sergeant grew more uneasy. 3 calls in 10 minutes? All from high-level offices? That's no accident, Daniels. Meanwhile, Elena sat quietly in the interrogation room, watching everything through the glass window. She noted the positions of the cameras, the number of officers, the layout of the hallways. She seemed to be studying the place more than worrying about her own arrest. Another officer entered, whispering to Daniels. "Chief says we need to reconsider. Something feels wrong. These calls are serious." Daniels waved him off. "No, I caught her. She's guilty. We can't let some phone call decide our work." The chief himself finally appeared at the door, his face stern. "Daniels, we'll handle this carefully. Don't push things further until we know who we're dealing with." But Daniels felt his authority slipping away. He raised his voice, determined not to look weak. "With all respect, Chief, I know what I saw. She's hiding something. I'll get it out of her." Elena, hearing this, leaned forward and finally spoke clearly. Her words carried weight. "You think you know what you saw, Officer Daniels. But the truth is much larger than you can imagine. Every action you take now will have consequences beyond this room." The chief froze for a moment, staring at her. Her tone was not of a guilty suspect but of someone used to giving orders. Daniels laughed harshly. Empty threats. But deep down, her calmness was shaking him. He had seen countless suspects, but none like her. By now, whispers were spreading through the station. Who was this woman? Why was she so calm? Why were important calls coming in? Even those who had mocked her earlier now felt uneasy. As the hours passed, tension grew heavier in the air. Daniels's pride made him blind, but everyone else could sense something unusual. Elena remained seated, silent again, waiting with patience. She knew something no one else in the room could guess: soon, backup would arrive, and everything would change. The second part of the story closes here with the station in suspense, the officers beginning to question Daniels's judgment, and Elena's quiet confidence hinting at the storm that is about to break. The question hangs: who is this woman really, and what will happen when the truth is revealed? Officer Daniels paced outside the interrogation room, his jaw tight and his pride pushing him to hold on to his decision. He believed he was right, but the atmosphere in the police station was changing fast. The phone calls from government officials had unsettled the chief, and whispers had spread among the officers. No one could understand why such powerful people would bother about one woman accused of shoplifting. Inside the room, Elena sat quietly, her hands folded on the table. She wasn't rattled, she wasn't nervous, she was waiting. Her silence felt heavier than words. The younger officers who glanced through the one-way glass noticed it too. They whispered among themselves that she looked more like a teacher watching students misbehave than a criminal caught stealing. Just then, the sound of engines roared outside. 2 black SUVs pulled up in front of the station. Their tinted windows reflected the late afternoon sun, and their sudden arrival drew attention. The desk officer stood up nervously, peeking outside. Within seconds, 4 men in dark suits stepped out, each moving with precise confidence. They carried badges, but not the usual ones. These badges bore the seal of federal authority. The chief went to meet them at the entrance, confusion written across his face. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" he asked carefully. One of the agents, tall and stern, presented his identification. "We're here for the woman you've detained. Her name is Elena. She's coming with us." The chief blinked, his throat dry. He didn't know what to say. He called Daniels immediately, who stormed out of the hallway with an irritated look. "What's this about?" "She's my arrest. She was stealing." The agent's sharp eyes fixed on Daniels. You made a mistake. A very big one. The tension in the room thickened. The chief asked the agents to step inside. They walked in with quiet authority, their polished shoes echoing on the floor. The entire station grew silent. Everyone could feel that something unusual was unfolding. Daniels, still proud, dragged Elena out of the interrogation room and shoved her forward. Here's your thief, he said sarcastically. You must have worked very fast to come save her. Elena straightened her posture and glanced at the agents, who nodded respectfully to her. One of them pulled out a leather folder and laid it on the table for everyone to see. Inside was Elena's official identification card stamped with the bold letters Central Intelligence Agency. The room fell into complete silence. The air seemed to freeze. Every officer, every clerk, even the chief himself stood stunned. Elena was not a thief. She was a CIA agent. Daniels's face lost its color. His lips trembled, but no words came out. His mind replayed everything he had done: the accusation, the rough handling, the strike to her face. And now he realized he had assaulted a federal agent. The sergeant who had doubted the story from the beginning stepped forward. He whispered in disbelief, she wasn't afraid because she didn't need to be. She knew she had the highest protection. The chief turned to Daniels, his voice low but heavy. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you understand the storm you've brought on this department? Daniels tried to defend himself, stuttering. She looked suspicious. She wouldn't explain. I was just doing my job. But his words sounded weak in the silence of the room. The agents ignored him completely and addressed the chief. Your officer assaulted a CIA operative on duty. She was in the middle of an undercover assignment. This mistake could have destroyed months of work. Elena finally spoke. Her voice was calm but sharp, each word like a blade. I gave you warnings. I told you that you were making a mistake. You didn't listen. Her words pierced Daniels more deeply than any shout could. His knees felt weak, but he forced himself to stand straight, hiding the shame building inside him. The agents surrounded Elena protectively, their body language clear: she was not to be touched again. One of them looked at Daniels with cold eyes. You'll answer for this. The CIA does not overlook actions like these. The chief tried to salvage the situation, apologizing to Elena, his voice shaking. We didn't know. Please understand. But Elena raised her hand gently, stopping him. It's not your apology I need. It's accountability. She turned her gaze back to Daniels, who could not meet her eyes. He stared at the floor, wishing he could undo everything. He realized that his pride and quick temper had led him here, in front of his colleagues, stripped of dignity. By now, the entire station was buzzing with whispers. Officers exchanged glances, their faces showing disbelief. Some were horrified, some embarrassed, and some secretly relieved that it wasn't them who had made such a mistake. The agents escorted Elena out of the station. She walked with quiet grace, her head held high, while Daniel stood frozen, his career flashing before his eyes. The moment the door closed behind her, the chief slammed his fist on the table. Daniels, you've brought shame to this department. Suspension is just the beginning. You may not wear that badge again. Daniels swallowed hard, his pride gone. His chest felt heavy, as if all the air had been taken from him. The third part of the story ends with the shocking reveal: the woman accused of theft was a CIA agent, and the officer who humiliated her is now the one facing disgrace. The tension leaves everyone wondering what consequences will fall on Daniels and the entire police department for this mistake. The police station felt heavy after Elena left with the federal agents. No one wanted to speak, yet every officer had the same thought running through their head: what had just happened would not end quietly. Officer Daniels sat at his desk, his hands shaking slightly. His face was pale, his pride broken, but he kept pretending he still had control. Deep down, though, He knew everything had changed. The chief walked back into the room with anger in his eyes. "Daniels," he said in a low, steady tone, "you've done more damage in one day than this department can handle in a year." His words carried weight, and the other officers kept their heads down, not daring to interrupt. Daniels opened his mouth to defend himself, but the chief raised a hand to silence him. "No excuses. You acted with arrogance. And now the CIA is involved." In a nearby corner, the sergeant who had doubted Daniels earlier leaned against the wall, watching. He could see Daniels's pride slowly crumbling. "I told you she was different," the sergeant said softly. His voice wasn't mocking, it was more like disappointment. Meanwhile, whispers spread like wildfire among the younger officers. They spoke quietly about how Elena had sat in that chair like she was the one in control. Some even said her silence had been scarier than any shouting. And now, learning she was a CIA agent, they realized she had been observing them all along. Not long after, the phone rang again. This time, the call came directly from a government liaison office. The chief took the call in his office, listening carefully. When he returned, his expression was grim. "The CIA is requesting an internal report on what happened today. They'll also be sending someone back to review the conduct of this station. Do you understand what this means?" No one spoke. The silence was enough to show they all understood. A mistake like this could stain the reputation of the entire department. Daniels felt his chest tighten. He had never feared paperwork or complaints before, but this was different. The CIA wasn't an ordinary agency. Their involvement meant this would go far beyond suspension. Hours later, Elena returned briefly with two agents, not to stay but to finalize the matter. Her presence in the station again made everyone straighten nervously. She walked into the chief's office, the agents behind her. Daniel sat outside, his hands clenched into fists, his heart racing. He wanted to apologize, but shame kept him silent. Inside the office, Elena explained in clear, calm words what had really happened. She had been undercover for months, investigating smuggling operations connected to the very jewelry store that accused her. The clerk who had whispered about her was part of the ring, trying to shift suspicion onto her so she wouldn't uncover more. The chief listened, horrified. He realized that Daniels's actions had nearly destroyed an entire federal operation. Elena's cover could have been blown completely if the agents hadn't arrived in time. When Elena finished, she stood up slowly. "I am not here for revenge," she said. "But I want accountability. If officers cannot control their temper, if they attack innocent people, then they should not wear the badge." Her words struck deep. The chief nodded heavily, promising that action would be taken. As Elena walked out again, Daniels caught her eye for the briefest moment. She didn't say anything, but her silence spoke louder than words. It was the kind of look that would haunt him forever, a look of calm judgment, not anger. That night, the station was restless. Officers avoided Daniels, whispering behind his back. Some pitied him, others thought he deserved everything coming. Daniels sat alone, replaying the events in his head. He realized that his pride had blinded him, that he had acted on anger instead of reason. He had wanted to look powerful, but now he only looked foolish. The chief prepared a full report for the higher authorities, knowing the department's reputation was already damaged. He looked around at his officers and reminded them, "This is what happens when arrogance takes over. Remember, every person you meet might carry a story far bigger than what you see." The fourth part of the story closes with the department shaken, Daniels facing the collapse of his career, and the truth about Elena's undercover mission beginning to surface. The stage is now set for the final consequences: the arrests of the real criminals, the downfall of the corrupt store clerk, and the lasting lesson Officer Daniels will never forget. The final part of the story begins with a tense silence inside the police station after Elena left once again with her fellow agents. Every officer remained shaken by what had happened earlier. But the story was not over yet. The truth behind Elena's mission was about to come to light, and it would not only change the fate of Officer Daniels but also bring justice to those who had tried to frame her. That same evening, the CIA agents returned to the jewelry store with Elena leading them. She was no longer just the quiet woman wrongly accused. She arrived with authority, supported by her team. Customers in the area watched as federal cars blocked the street and suited men stepped out, their presence signaling something serious was about to unfold. The store clerk who had first accused Elena froze when he saw her again. He had believed the lie he created had worked, but now his fear showed in his trembling hands. Elena walked straight to the counter, her eyes fixed on the clerk. "You thought accusing me would protect you," she said quietly, "but it only exposed you faster." Within minutes, agents moved into the back rooms of the store. Boxes were opened, documents were taken, and hidden compartments were discovered. Inside were items linked to smuggling precious stones, unmarked jewelry, and even shipping papers that connected the store to illegal international trade. The clerk tried to deny everything, but his voice cracked under pressure. He was placed in handcuffs right in front of the same customers who had once believed his words over Elena's silence. Now, their whispers carried shame toward him and respect toward her. Back at the station, Daniel sat at his desk, restless. The chief entered with news that struck him like a hammer. "The store clerk you trusted turned out to be the criminal. Elena was investigating him for months. Your mistake nearly destroyed her case." Daniels felt his heart sink. He remembered how proud he had been earlier when he had accused her, how he had ignored her warnings, how he had even hid her. Now everything collapsed into shame. He tried to speak, but no words came. His colleagues avoided his eyes, their respect for him gone. Later that night, Elena returned once more to the station, this time to close the matter officially. She walked calmly into the chief's office while Daniel stood nearby, unable to look at her. The agents handed over files proving the smuggling operation, making it clear that Elena's work had prevented a much larger crime. The chief apologized again, but Elena did not waste time on bitterness. She simply said, "I will not press charges against your officer. His punishment will not come from me. It will come from what he has to live with, the knowledge that his arrogance nearly destroyed a federal mission." Those words struck deeper than any punishment could. Daniels lowered his head, realizing she was right. The next morning, newspapers carried the story. The headlines spoke about a smuggling ring uncovered in the city, but smaller lines hinted at a police officer's mistake that nearly ruined it. Daniels's name was not printed, but everyone in town knew who he was. People whispered about him in coffee shops and grocery stores. His pride had turned into humiliation. The jewelry clerk and his partners were arrested and taken away to face trial. Elena, however, disappeared again, back into her world of shadows and silence. She was not the kind of person to seek fame or recognition. She returned to her work, leaving behind a lesson for everyone who had judged her wrongly. At the station, the chief held a meeting with all the officers. He looked each one in the eye and said, "This incident should never be repeated. Remember, you don't know who people are or what burdens they carry. Treat every person with respect, no matter how they look. Power is not about who can shout the loudest or strike the hardest. It is about patience, understanding, and control." Daniels listened quietly. His career was damaged, his pride gone, but his mind had changed. For the first time, he understood the danger of letting arrogance guide his actions. He would carry that shame forever, but perhaps it would make him a different man if he learned from it. Elena's words echoed in his head, "Every action you take has consequences beyond this room." He knew now how true they were. The story closes with Elena stepping into a black SUV once more, the city lights reflecting off the car's windows. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her mission was complete, the criminals were caught, and the lessons were left behind for those who had wronged her. The police station returned to its normal routine, but the officers were never quite the same. Whenever they looked at a suspect, they remembered Elena. And Daniels, sitting at his desk, knew he had been given the hardest lesson of his life: never judge too quickly, never act out of pride, and never forget that every stranger might be far more than they appear.